Hello, everybody. This is Lucid Investment Strategies on the Hyperwave channel with Socrates and myself, Tyler Jenks. Socrates doesn't need any introduction to those in our Telegram program, those that follow him on Twitter and on posting some very interesting articles and comments on TradingView and a lot of other places. So some people are a little bit confused how this is all working, why Leah's not been around and why Socrates and I are doing all these daily vlogs. Socrates has turned out to be a very valuable asset to Lucid Investment Strategies because it marries short and intermediate term trading techniques, particularly in the crypto markets, particularly in Bitcoin, and very consistent with the way Lucid Investment Strategy looks at Bitcoin as something much bigger than the other cryptos. But for Socrates, that doesn't eliminate the trading aspects of the crypto markets and many other markets, such as in currencies and stocks and indexes and those sort of things. So it's a big space that we haven't been in, meaning Leah and myself. Everybody knows that Leah and me got started. I got started with just the two of us beginning to vlog about a year and a half ago. And we originally were just talking about crypto, but then we began branching out into money management and traditional markets and that sort of thing. And we came across Socrates as he came across us, and we started working together more and more closely on all sorts of projects, webinars, our first real workshop down in Las Vegas. He was an integral part of that. So we have asked Socrates to join the team on a full-time basis, and we will have a lot of other announcements coming in early July about another individual and another structural change that we're going to make. But Leah is very busy doing a number of important things having to do with family and her personal life, as well as getting ready to take over a big portion of what we do at Lucid Investment Strategies. And we'll be going into all the details of this in the coming weeks, but certainly by early July, we'll be ready to talk about everything we're doing. Now, first of all, I'll say hi to Socrates, and what are you up to now?
Hello, how's it going? I certainly appreciate the introduction, and I couldn't be happier to be a part of the team moving forward. As you said, I'll be very excited to chime in on the daily podcast with some more short and intermediate term analysis, which can complement the longer term trends that you are so good at following. And moving forward, Leah will absolutely be remain a very integral part of Lucid Investment and everything that's going on there. I'm just going to be helping out more with the vlogging on a regular basis. So I appreciate you having me on and letting everybody know what's going on. And for me, I am just happy to be here this afternoon. Just got back from my afternoon walk, and it started raining all over me. You might be able to see I'm still wet. It's pretty much soaked me, but I'm happy to be back inside and excited to talk about the Libra.
Yeah, this is a very interesting topic. I've heard bits and pieces of it for about a year and a half now. And all of a sudden, Wired Magazine came out with a big article, and then the announcement was made last night or this morning about the official white paper that has been released. I just listened to Jimmy's song go through word by word. Socrates has read the entire document himself. I was on a show this morning on Block TV with Joe Saz getting into Libra. They had several other segments about Libra. So this is a big topic, and we want to get into it as well as we can. There's a lot of speculation going on. We've got some tweets from Saifuddin Ammous about it. As I say, Socrates has read through the document. I've heard Jimmy Song's analysis of it. And so we're going to try to put all that together. There's a lot of other things going on today, and we'll try to get to some of them. Bitcoin has been acting a little bit funny, and Socrates is right on top of that. So we'll take a look at that. And the stock market is booming, sort of out of nowhere. Facebook, last I saw, was up big, and a bunch of people were asking, is this because of Libra? I don't think so. I think it's because it's been in a very strong uptrend, and the stock market's up so much, but who knows? So let's get right into it. And I think we'll start just by a little historical background for those of you that don't know. I'm just going to give you the history of this thing. David Marcus, who at the time was the head of Facebook Messenger and one of the top executives at Facebook, was on a vacation and came up with the idea of this thing that is now called Libra. And then he wrote a very detailed, the way the story goes, a very detailed pitch to Mark Zuckerberg about his ideas and exactly what he thought would happen and how it would happen. And as the story goes, Mark Zuckerberg loved it and said, that's exactly what I've been thinking about. Now, a little more background. Facebook, some of you know, already had a cryptocurrency. And that cryptocurrency was called, let me just see if I've got it here. It was called Credits, Credits, and it was used by Facebook gamers to be able to buy and sell things. Basically, that's what it was. And it was around for about 4 years. I think it might still be around, I'm not sure. Anyway, they had a little experience in it, so Mark Zuckerberg was into all of that sort of thing. Now, David Marcus also ran PayPal for a while, which I did not know. I just heard Jimmy Song talking about that. The reason I mentioned PayPal is now we're going to get into the substance of where this thing is, since it was just announced within the last 24 hours that they're ready to launch. It will not be launched until the first or second quarter of 2020. This isn't the launch today. This is making it public that they're ready to go on it, and they're putting the pieces together. And what the pieces basically are doesn't really show up very well in the white paper, but if you read the Wired magazine article, and you can get it simply by Googling Libra, Libra. It was one of the first references by Google today. If you read that carefully, they did a pretty good job of breaking down what does this really mean and where did it come from? Not from the point of view of other cryptos and Bitcoin, but just relative to Facebook, what they're trying to achieve. So we're going to get into it a little bit just by, first of all, saying that there's two parts to this thing. One of them, and the most important part, is called the Libra Association, of which Facebook eventually will only be one of 100 basically partners in the association. They've already named half a dozen, and that in itself is mind-blowing, because the ones named so far are MasterCard, Visa, PayPal, Uber, eBay, Vodafone, and Mercy Corp. Now, some of you know all of those. Some of you don't know Vodafone as well, but it's one of the largest telecommunication companies in the world. You all know Uber, eBay, PayPal, Visa, and MasterCard. Mercy Corps is one of the largest, if not the largest, charitable organizations in the world. So just look it up and you will see what I'm talking about. But anytime there's a crisis anywhere, having to do with weather, having to do with drought, having to do with starvation, having to do with war, they are involved with millions, hundreds of millions, billions of dollars. It's an amazing organization. And that should be a clue to what they are attempting to do with these partners. Obviously, Facebook's got tremendous reach. And obviously, MasterCard, Visa, PayPal, Uber, and eBay have tremendous reach. In other words, billions of potential contacts. And those, there's going to be 100 of them, which will each put $10 million into the pot. And the pot, once again, is the Libra Association, which basically is $1 billion just sitting there to get this thing off and rolling. That's part one. Part two, and I'm trying to minimize how Facebook works into that. That's important. I believe, that's my reading of it, that Facebook is only 1/100th of that association and everybody has one vote. It's not like Facebook, because they came up with this and are putting it together and all that sort of stuff, are going to be a managing partner. They're simply 1/100th. Well, why would Facebook do that? The second part of it is there is a wallet that will be Facebook's. And that is where all of the Libra coin will go through for purchases and sales. As far as I know, that's the only one. Now, the name of that wallet is Calibra, Calibra. And that will be a regulated subsidiary of Facebook, not of the association. The word regulated there is the important word, and we'll get into that because that is one of the big things that Jimmy's song, going through word by word, kept pointing to. He says that is a nonsensical term having to do with a regulated association that is supposedly going to be open source. And he says as soon as you use the word governing or governance with decentralized governance, which are the two words used over and over and over again in the white paper, it becomes nonsensical. And I believe that Socrates will take the same side of that. I don't understand enough of what is being said in the white paper to really comment on it, but I did want to make the important distinction between those two parts of the project. All right. The other thing is that the association itself is going to be headquartered in Switzerland, not at Facebook headquarters, not in the United States. It's going to be headquartered in Switzerland for a number of reasons having to do with regulation and legal matters, I'm sure, and the way Switzerland has gotten very involved in the crypto markets. I'm sure there's a connection there somewhere. Okay, so enough of that kind of heavy stuff. Let's get into some of the details of what Socrates, after reading the white paper, has concluded about what they're trying to do, so that we can kind of understand how does this fit into the Bitcoin world, the cryptocurrency world as we now know it, and is this a tremendous new innovation possibly, where the other 3,000 projects other than Bitcoin have not been able to come up with this kind of organizational structure. And we're not going to be able to cover all of this in a short vlog of an hour or as long as this takes. But with that, I'm going to turn it over to Socrates to get his reading on what he's come to understand today.
All right, I appreciate you turning it over. Just saw that our friend Tone Vays is in the chat, and he might be able to hop on and add his 2 cents here. So keep an eye out for him. And until then, I will be taking a look. Went through the white paper and just highlighted some stuff. So I'll go through real quick to see what is the value proposition and how they are going to be trying to accomplish that. So in the problem statement, they line out 1.7 billion adults globally remain outside of the financial system with no access to a traditional bank, even though 1 billion have a mobile phone and nearly 500 million have internet access. So it seems to me like they are targeting people in emerging markets who have a cell phone, specifically a smartphone, and also internet access. So they're looking for people with phones and internet access without banks. So these adults who remain outside of the financial system but have started to adopt some technology, that is who they're targeting. From what I can tell, they're not going to be targeting your mom or grandma who's on there posting pictures and that sort of stuff. They're more looking at the global markets and the emerging markets to bring adoption of the financial industry there. So next we've got mass market usage of existing blockchains and cryptocurrencies has been hindered by their volatility and lack of scalability. So their primary value propositions are going to be a stable coin that is scalable. Pretty simple right there. And that sentence there makes me think that their main competitor is going to be Tether. Tether is a fully, well, not fully, they claim to be. Now it sounds like they're about 70, maybe 80% backed by US dollar. And then they use that to issue their cryptocurrencies, and they use their reserves to keep the volatility down. So that seems, that's the first competitor that's jumping right out at me, and that has been a very hot market over the last couple of years. Many exchanges are starting to issue their own stable currencies, so they would be competing with more than just Tether. They list the opportunity here, which there is no opportunity lined out here that does not already accomplished by Bitcoin. So I see no opportunity lined out there. The world truly needs a reliable digital currency and infrastructure that together can deliver on the promise of the Internet of Money. That is Bitcoin. That is what Bitcoin is. So I am not sure how to, I'm not sure what to say other than the Internet of Money and the promise of a decentralized store of value. That is accomplished by Bitcoin, and there is, it just doesn't make sense to say that the world truly needs something that's reliable when Bitcoin is as reliable as it can possibly get. And together to deliver on the promise, that just does not make any sense. So 1 second here, I'm trying to get Leah's attention. Great, okay, I think we're all good to go there. Let's see, all right, moving on down the list. While final decision-making authorities rest within the association. So this is something here that is very important to me, and it looks like Tone is joining now.
Great. Hey, Tone.
Hey guys, I didn't mean to interrupt.
No, I'm glad you did. I saw you on with Jimmy's song, but I guess you were riding in a van at the time.
Yeah, it wasn't ideal conditions. Facebook was not. Facebook unfortunately didn't launch this white paper during my convenient time of sitting in front of a computer. So
right.
But I have to join the stream.
Great. I'm glad you did. Thank you. Just jump in anytime.
Yeah, no, let Socrates finish up, and then whenever you guys have my comment, just ask. I do have to leave in like 30 minutes. So I have to
Okay.
go to dinner under sunlight, 24 hours daylight here where I am.
That's right.
That's excellent. Well, thank you again for joining, and I will jump back in here and pull up what we were looking at. So as Tyler mentioned, they're approximating that there will be 100 members of the Libra Association. And that Facebook will only be one of those members. And there's a number of high-profile partners that look to be coming on board. And just we've seen in the past in crypto, just listing a high-profile partner, one or two, can be all that you need to get a ton of interest from people who may not understand exactly what is going on. So here we've got a bunch of really well-respected partners that they're working towards getting in this Libra Association. And what really jumps out at me here is that they basically tell you right here in the white paper that this is a centralized project. The final decision-making authority rests with the association. Therefore, this is not decentralized and this is not a blockchain. They're either very confused on what decentralization is and what blockchains are, or they're maybe being very tricky with their verbiage, and we'll get into that later. Okay, next is that this quote-unquote blockchain is a permissioned blockchain. Access is granted to run a validator, node. You need to be granted access to run a node. Only these 100 members of the Libra Association will be granted access to run a node. So the nodes will not be decentralized by any sense of the word. I cannot run a node if I want, nor can you unless you are able to become one of these 100 members. Now, they're telling you right here that they've got the final decision-making authority and that they're the ones who can grant access to run validator nodes. Like, are you kidding me? That just is a little beyond ridiculous as far as I'm concerned.
Hey, Socrates. Sorry. So the first question I would ask them is, so if you've selected 100 and then 99 of them, or what the hell, 51 of them want to kick someone out, how simple is that? Like not even, I bet you not even anyone in that 100 is, I mean, they can be removed at any time and someone else can replace them. It's like selecting the stocks for the S&P 500.
Yep, absolutely. I think they even go on to mention that later on in the white paper, that they need a 70% vote to basically do whatever that they want. So if they have 70% of the people on their side, they can kick anybody out, add somebody new, issue new coins, burn coins, anything that they want to do. As long as they've got a 70% vote, as far as I understand, they will be able to do that. So yeah, great point there. And as Jimmy mentioned, it is kind of nonsensical for the term decentralized governance. That just doesn't make sense. And another term that doesn't make sense to me at all is a permissioned blockchain. Being a permissioned blockchain is just completely nonsensical. If you're a blockchain, there's nobody that's granting you permission to run a node. That's just completely absurd. Moving forward, the challenge is that as of today, we do not believe that there is a proven solution that can deliver the scale, stability, and security needed to support billions of people and transactions across the globe through a permissionless network. So they're saying that you can't do this with a permissionless network, so we're going to basically skip over everything that gives blockchain value in order to be able to scale and be stable.
You know what this tells me?
What's that?
We've never heard of Bitcoin. We've never read the Bitcoin white paper, and we've never even looked at what is happening in that ecosystem.
I couldn't agree more. I think that they're either completely ignorant or they're being maybe willfully ignorant to potentially dupe some of the governing bodies into letting them transact in their country by saying that this is a blockchain, knowing full well that it's not, and hoping that the governing bodies will not understand what they're trying to get by them.
Let me jump in here because this is one of the things I sort of disagreed with Jimmy Song on. And that's too strong. It's not that I disagree with him, nor do I disagree with Tone, nor do I disagree with what Socrates is saying. I believe what they're doing is carving out a space that is much more consistent with the regulatory bodies and the central banks and the IMF and the World Banks. And they're partnering with people that can get it done from the perspective that it's an international body of massive organizations with massive reach. So I think what they're doing is they are being very nuanced. They perfectly know what Bitcoin is. They perfectly know that Bitcoin does everything they're saying they want to do better, but there's no way to control it. There's no way for regulators to control it. Look at our SEC saying that it is the only thing that they can't reach. The same thing with big banking organizations, the same thing with big charitable organizations. It's really, Bitcoin is for everyone, and everyone can contribute to it. Everyone can benefit from it. But other than that, they're saying this is the closest thing in a real politic, in a real way. None of the other 3,000 projects are, for a million reasons that Tone Vays has delineated over years and years and years. We all know the black and the white within crypto. The white is Bitcoin, everything else is black. And it looks to me like what they're trying to do is get into the gray area in between those, which makes it much more practical for large-scale organizations, charities, governments, regulators to say, okay, well, we will let this go. We won't get in the way in any way, and we will even back it. So I think there is a very subtle middle ground here, not better in any sense than Bitcoin, but I think that's the needle they're trying to thread.
Yeah, I can definitely see what you're saying, and that is pretty much going to be my conclusion, is that this could be a very lucrative project and payment processing network, but it is absolutely not a blockchain. So that is kind of the conclusion that I've come to, in the sense that they are being very particular with the verbiage that they're using and the markets that they're going after. So I do agree with some of what you're saying there, but I just really disagree with this being termed a blockchain or a cryptocurrency. And I can go ahead and get into my next quote, which basically sums it up pretty nicely. So this is their blockchain. The Libra blockchain is supposed to be a more energy efficient approach to consensus than proof of work used in some other blockchains. Unlike previous blockchains, which view the blockchain as a collection of blocks of transactions, the Libra blockchain is a single data structure that records the history of transactions and states over time. So to me, that is, it's not proof of work. It's not even really proof of stake. It's some brand new sort of protocol that seems to have no real advantage in the decentralization sense of the word. What do you think here, Tone and Tyler? And
I mean, like if you read that part that you have in yellow, the Libra blockchain is a single data structure that records the history of transactions and states over time. It sounds like an Excel spreadsheet. I mean, again, there's no innovation here, right? I mean, it's just a database. The whole thing that makes it a blockchain is proof of work. If it's not proof of work, it's not a blockchain, it's a database.
I couldn't agree more, 100%. That's exactly how I interpreted this. Originally, I was thinking that they're mainly competing with Tether, and now it's kind of looks more like a Ripple or an XRP sort of situation.
Yeah, see, here's the thing. They're not competing with any of them. Like I just sent out a tweet. They're competing with the IMF drawing rights. It's the closest thing to it, because they're not competing with Tether, because Tether is the US dollar. And they're not exactly competing with Ripple, because Ripple is not stable, right? Ripple is has its own price discovery on unregulated exchanges by 12-year-olds if they wanted to, right? Ripple was also, they created 100 billion tokens representing the stock of their company, right? So clearly Facebook is not using this as a funding mechanism to create Facebook. Facebook is already established, and they already have legal equities, legal stocks. So it's not competing with anything in the crypto space other than maybe the Maker DAO token. Maybe, I don't know. However, that one is. I'm kind of learning about that one. I know it's totally useless, but I haven't been able to articulate how. The only thing it's really competing on is with the IMF special drawing rights. The only difference between the Facebook, basket stabilized coin and the IMF version is that Facebook is supposedly private money and IMF is supposedly public money. Now, it would be nice in a world where we have one public money, like the IMF drawing right, and one private money, like the Facebook token, with 100 other companies invested in a token, right? So basically, you don't want Google's money to compete with Facebook's money, to compete with Amazon's money. You want the private companies to kind of merge together and give the world a single private money. And then you want the world's governments to get together and give the world a single public money, because the world having 8,000 different currencies is honestly ridiculous. And this is what bothers me most about the crypto space. Like, we need another cryptocurrency the way we need another language. like we don't need it.
Yeah, great input.
Those are great points, Tone, especially the SDR. That's one of the things that jumped out at me. The SDR is basically run by the US because the US is the only country large enough to have veto power with 15% of world GDP. And the IMF is run by a European, but the World Bank is run by an American. And that's where all the problem is coming with China and India and Russia. They don't like anymore that the US dollar and US policy dictates world commerce. And again, that's why I think what this project is attempting to do is just what you stated. Exactly. There is a public, there is a way to get rid of all currency, and that is through SDRs. And you can be darn sure that the powers that be are looking very carefully at how that would work. But using Bitcoin, or thinking that Bitcoin is going to be the private side of that equation, where you see this wild movement of price as opposed to a stable price relative to a basket of currencies. And what I didn't get out of Jimmy, because I wasn't able to listen to the whole thing, so hopefully Socrates found it, is what is that reserve going to look like relative to this? This is not going to be relative to the US dollar, meaning Libra. It is going to be stable to some kind of a basket, which is what China's been talking about. So that question needs to be answered, and hopefully, but I doubt it if it's in this white paper.
Yeah, they do mention, they don't list out exactly what it will be in the percentages. It just says right here that it will be backed by a collection of low volatility assets such as bank deposits and short-term government securities in currencies from stable and reputable central banks. And I believe they go on to say that they can change that at any time if the central foundation decides that they want to hold more Japanese yen and less US dollar or anything like that. I think that they will be adjusting that based on market conditions to try to keep it as stable as possible is how I understand it. It will not be able to convert into the same amount of a given local currency. Libra is not a peg to a single currency. Rather, as the value of the underlying assets move, the value of one Libra is in any local currency may fluctuate. So they're trying to make it as stable as possible. But it's still definitely unclear in terms of how they will accomplish that. And you're right, that is definitely something that they will need to iron out very clearly before this project is launched. So the assets in the Libra reserve will be held by a geographically distributed network of custodians with investment grade credit rating to provide both security and decentralization of the assets. I kind of laughed out loud to myself a little bit here, and it sounds like they consider decentralization simply if reserves are held by a geographically distributed network. So if you have, instead of one person in New York holding all the assets in a New York bank, now we've got 100 people across the world all holding in different geographic locations and with different custodians with investment grade credit. Now we've got 100 banks across the world keeping our reserves, and now we're going to consider that decentralized. That is not decentralized at all. That's diversified. Being diversified is not being decentralized. So this was one of the most comical sentences that I have come across in this white paper so far. Go ahead.
Yeah, but it also goes against the concept of decentralization, right? Like you can't decentralize a physical asset. The only thing that makes it decentralized is the fact that there is no physical form, because we don't yet have the technology to, decentralize a bar of gold, to have it, digitally in space, and then somehow it comes together through atoms, right? Like if the one thing that makes Bitcoin decentralized is the fact that it can't be confiscated, and if you have a physical form, it can be confiscated.
Yep, exactly.
Completely agree. Okay. So just another one, the Libra blockchain and Libra reserve need a governing entity. So they're trying to be a blockchain that's decentralized, but they say they need a governing entity. Just absolutely ridiculous. The association is designed to facilitate the operation of the Libra blockchain. To coordinate agreement among stakeholders, the network's validator nodes. They basically have complete autonomy. They've got complete control over what's getting validated, who can be the node. They're going to control what is in reserves. And it seems like this is so far from what can be considered a blockchain that I really do not understand why they keep using these terms. Like it seems like I'm inclined to agree with Tyler in the sense that they must know what Bitcoin is. They must know what a blockchain is. But if that's the case, then they wouldn't be using these terms this way. So let's see here. The association is governed by the Libra Association Council, which is comprised of one representative per validator node. It just keeps getting a little sillier and sillier. The association is the only party able to create and destroy Libra. So they're totally in control of the supply. And there is much left before that. So the target launch date is 2020. Tyler already mentioned that. It's not available now. We're still about half a year away or so, maybe a year away. So this is still just very early on.
Well, and the big question to me, I mean, this just jumps out at me. This is running counter to what central banks and the IMF and the World Bank, and the entire macro system is based on, which leads me to believe that all of those parties are involved in this. And that's why I say it seems to me like what Facebook and this entire project is threading the needle. And it wouldn't surprise me if a number of the 100 that end up on the association are not private parties, but representatives to public parties. And I can't prove that, but we've got a year to find out before this launches. But that would be one thing I would be very much looking at, because going back to what I said before, it's very clear that the only project is Bitcoin in terms of all of the things that we talk about: fungibility, unconfiscatability, stable, and real value, real money, all of those things which cannot be controlled by the public sector. And this is an attempt to go somewhere in between those two things. And that's just speculation on my part, but we'll see as time goes on.
Yep, I definitely see what you're saying, and I'm inclined to agree with that. It seems like this could be much bigger than a lot of people are realizing, even though the fundamentals seem so flawed from a crypto perspective, from a blockchain perspective. So finishing up here, this is where it says the association will establish policies and procedures that establish how the association can change the composition of the reserve basket. So at any time they can change what is backing the Libra. And I believe, all right, so let's see here. So they set out to how are they going to define success? What are they trying to accomplish? Success will mean that a person working abroad has a fast and simple way to send money to family back home, and a college student can pay for their rent as easily as they can buy coffee. So this is something that we've been hearing for years in the crypto space. You can basically, buy big ticket items. You can send some money back home when the mem pool isn't too clogged, and the fees will be very reasonable. And it has been a goal of a lot of people to be able to buy a cup of coffee with a Bitcoin or with a portion of one. And it seems like the Libra is trying to figure this out, and they're maybe years behind realizing the issues, the technical issues that they will run into down the road if they really are trying to establish a decentralized blockchain that is capable of transacting in micro payments. So it just seems like they are like, this is something that you would see in a ICO white paper from 2017, where all that it was talking about was how we're going to have faster and cheaper payments so that you can buy a cup of coffee, or that an immigrant can send money back home. I mean, this is IOTA. I mean, anything that focused on cheap payments, this is all that they were concerned about. This was how they defined success. So right here, I think that this is potentially significantly off the mark, and that for them to accomplish this, they would need to get the landlord to accept Libra. They would need to get the tenant to transact in Libra. They would need to get the coffee shop to accept Libra. Like, there's so many pieces of the puzzle that they would need to get in place for this to succeed. And it just seems like that it's something that's already been tried and failed multiple times. So that is my interpretation of what is lined out here. Any input from you guys?
Yeah, I just don't understand why. I mean, we already have everything that they want has already been done successfully on WeChat in China, and they did not have to invent a stupid currency backed by a basket. You know, all Facebook had to do was follow the model of WeChat and use dollars. Why was that so? Well, I mean, that's it. And if they really want to be clever, they would have bank accounts in every single country that allows Facebook to operate. and then they would be connected through all those currencies, and they would instantly do transfers from one Facebook account in America to another Facebook account in the Philippines through Facebook coin that is fully backed by US dollars, which is the most stable global currency. And because the person on the other end would be converting Facebook coin into the Filipino peso if they wanted to, they would compete in the exchange rate space and hedge it, hire some financial guys. Like, the invention of another currency is ridiculous here. It does not achieve their goal. Like, it's like they're building a brand new payment network, but for some dumb reason, they're creating another currency along with it. Like, either create a new currency or create a payment network. Like you're gonna fail. This is ridiculous.
Absolutely. I really agree with what you're saying there, and think that this could definitely succeed as a payment network. They've got tons of users, and there are many reasons why I could see it succeeding as a payment network. So I definitely think that they need to define their value proposition and their mission statement in order to have any sort of success. And it also just makes me wonder is what is a social media company doing trying to compete in the payment processing space? It doesn't make a whole lot of sense to me. If you're trying to be everything to everyone, you usually
no. Actually, no. I gotta disagree with you there, Socrates. I think I think a social network company is best in line to compete in the payment space because everyone has Facebook. So they are already, everyone is already connected. Like, the simplest way for me to send money to any one of my friends would be through Facebook if we're both on Facebook, because otherwise not everyone is on PayPal, and PayPal has to connect to your bank. But Facebook knows who you are, right? Like I know I have a PayPal account that's so old that I actually have no bank account connected to it because that bank failed like 10 years ago, right? And I still get to get away with it. And like, the money that I have sitting on, a little bit of money that I have on PayPal is in PayPal dollars, actually. And like, they forced me to connect another credit card to it, but the point is, the most globally connected company to the most number of humans is the best in line to be a payment network. But I just don't understand why they're going through this ridiculous trouble creating another currency, and not only going through a trouble of creating a currency, creating a centralized system that they think is decentralized. So they're going through an enormous programming effort, an enormous expense, this enormous complication to create something that is not going to be decentralized anyway. This is the part that I don't understand. Like this is as I mean, this is it's just like it's just so complicated. Like, you can do a better job just doing it yourself without all these companies and just holding dollars.
That's very interesting. I had never thought of a social network to be the best suited to enter the payment processing space. That's definitely something I'll have to think about more. I appreciate that input, and that kind of leads us into the next part that I wanted to talk about, and that is this list of tweets from Saifedean. He's got a very interesting perspective, and there were a couple things that I wanted to highlight, and I definitely recommend everybody to go read through the whole thing, because it seems like, as far as I can tell, he's got a very good understanding of what's going on. And this is the tweet that really got me thinking. He says, the only functional advantage of calling this centralized system a blockchain is arguably in regulation. Easier to get things by regulators by using crypto buzzwords than admitting to just running a bank. Otherwise, everyone would be more efficient if centralized. What do you guys think about that?
I agree completely. That's what I was trying to say before about threading the needle between the public and the private sectors. And I think, as far as I can see so far, they've accomplished that, and gets me to suspect that they're actually been working with them. It doesn't do what they say their goal is, or the way they're going to measure success. I think that is just boilerplate. I think what they are really doing is they're attempting to come with a new world currency in a way that regulators and central banks and others will buy into. And by doing that, solve the problem that Bitcoin has for those regulators and finance ministers and central banks around the world. It's a way to carve out a piece, so you don't need euros, and you don't need Deutsche Marks, and you don't need yen, and you don't need US dollars, because everyone everywhere will be able to buy and sell from each other with this new currency.
No, Tyler, but you still will, right? I mean, this is the problem. I talked about it in Russian on Forklog. It's like creating Esperanto as the language, right? We need to create a language to remove all the other languages, and now you just have another useless language. So you're still gonna have all those other currencies, but now you're adding one that you think is gonna remove them all, but your currency doesn't have any innovation in it. So all you're doing is creating yet another language. It's like the only way you're going to eliminate the other languages is by creating a more innovative language. So same thing here. The only way you're going to eliminate the current set of currencies is by actually creating an innovative currency. Bitcoin is an innovative currency. It is at a completely different level than all the other fiat currencies. This is just another fiat currency. It is still can be inflated at will. It is still censored. It's still censored. It can still be confiscated. It is not decentralized like Bitcoin is. Now, all of the currencies in the crypto space that are trying to pretend like they're Bitcoin also make no sense, because now they're simply diluting Bitcoin, which solve the problem. So going back to comparing, the type of level that Bitcoin has taken all the currencies before it, coming back to language, it's not going to be Esperanto or some other language that's going to unify all the languages. It literally has to be something innovative. Like if someone can find a way to, like, I don't know, maybe find some kind of a chemical that activates a piece of our brains where we can now communicate telepathically, that will actually remove all of the current languages, because then we no longer need them. We have a way of communicating that's at a higher level than our current system. But all they're doing is creating another fiat currency, and and if they start to succeed, then Google will do the same, and Amazon will do the same, and the Chinese companies will do the same, and we're just going to get a bunch of more currencies that are confusing the shit out of people.
That's the biggest problem, as far as I'm concerned, is this is going to do nothing but confuse the space as a whole and really muddle the value proposition of Bitcoin. Most people that when they're first introduced to Bitcoin are highly suspicious, and the first thing they think is, well, it's not backed by anything. And now if they see this Libra is sponsored by Facebook and all these other big name companies, and it's backed by currencies and local bank accounts, and now people think, oh, well, I can get on board with that. And now they're getting into the crypto space while completely missing the whole reason why it exists in the first place. And that could really be pretty disastrous. It could potentially drive some short-term price appreciation, where people are then also starting to buy some Litecoin and Bitcoin just because now they're getting into it and wanting to watch the price go up, whatever. But down the road, when they are not understanding why it is that Bitcoin exists, and the majority of the market participants got in through Facebook, and they just really have no idea why Bitcoin exists in the first place and why it is different from the Libra. If we end up with a market that is that unsophisticated, we're going to be in real trouble. And Bitcoin's market cap dominance price is going to go to like 5–10%. I mean, that could be really bad. So that's what worries me, is that if this is very successful, there's no reason why Google and Apple and everybody else won't do the same thing. And then we're going to find ourselves in a world like Tone said, it'll basically be like financial Babylon, where we'll have all these languages where nobody can talk to each other because everybody's got their own language and their own coin. So that is, I love that analogy, and I definitely think that that's the biggest thing that worries me, is the fact that they are being a payment processor that's marketing themselves as a blockchain.
Well, I would agree with what both of you say, but to me, what I'm trying to figure out is not should this succeed, but will it succeed? And I think both of you are talking about it shouldn't succeed because, whereas what is striking me is which is the most palatable to the most people today. Is it the Bitcoin structure, which is so confusing because of the other 3,000 projects that have been thrown on top of the crypto space? Or is it this project? And I don't mean just for individuals, I mean for regulators and for central banks and for banks in general. Ripple has been trying to get into that, and it's clear that they have been unsuccessful for very good reasons that Tone has pointed out in his crypto scams. But this isn't a scam. This is a marketing tool that, in a great sense, dumbs down the potential of what Bitcoin is about. Bitcoin is quantum physics, and you can't teach quantum physics to the masses. So I agree with what you just said, Socrates, that you are very worried about what this could do to not only the crypto space, but to Bitcoin. I am too. But I'm not talking about that side of it. I'm talking about the practicality of getting together Vodafone, eBay, Uber, PayPal, Visa, MasterCard, Mercy Corp, and another 75 of the biggest names that have the biggest reach across the planet, and a wink and a nod from the regulators and the central banks. Which is going to succeed? I don't know, but I would be very worried that this is a serious proposal as opposed to the other 3,000 we've heard before.
Actually, like, I think this could be very good for Bitcoin. I mean, I think this is going to be a shit show, and I think that a lot of other companies, especially in other countries, are going to say, well, if Facebook is going to do it, and though countries around the world are going to let them do it, why aren't they going to let us do it, right? So, for example, if let's say what was that? Oh, sorry, I thought I heard sorry. So let's say the European country. I thought there was a Bloomberg article saying that the European countries aren't happy about this, right? But let's say the European countries allow Facebook to have their currency all throughout Europe, right? So why can't the European version of similar thing come out? And is the US going to be obligated, not to call it a currency of terrorists, right? And now we are flooding the world with more useless fiat currencies, right? So I think, if anything, this will help Bitcoin in the long run. I mean, the more you piss off the consumer with this silliness, the more Bitcoin thrives.
I think in the long run, Bitcoin is the answer. What I've been looking for are what are the possible usage cases between either Bitcoin and or a gold standard or a combination of them, or default on the debt situation, or the IMF and the World Bank and the central banks getting together and using the SDRs in some fashion. I think that what is being proposed here is a potential addition that is fairly easily adoptable. It will not kill Bitcoin. It could very easily kill all the other cryptos off. It could easily kill off all the other stable coins. Bitcoin will survive, and in the long run, everybody will realize why it did, because of everything Tone is saying and everything that Socrates is saying and everything Jimmy Song was saying.
Oh, hey, Tyler. So sorry,
Yeah.
I have to run in a minute. But by the way, they keep talking about how it's stable based on a basket. What's in the basket? What is it stable to? What is their benchmark for stability?
Well, we don't know yet, but what it is the same as the US dollar, the DXYs. The DXY is made up of, a bunch of currencies, and everybody's got faith in the US dollar. Therefore, when those currencies are moving around up and down, it's always against the US dollar. Even though it's not a reserve currency anymore, everyone believes it is. What this is it'll be some basket similar to that, but much broader. And so it's basically saying that if you take, what they are considering to be very stable investments, short-term, high credit, issued by governments, and you put those together in a basket, and this thing will be relative to that basket.
So the basket. So it's a basket of government fiats
And short-term debt.
and short-term debt.
Exactly. As well as
the one thing that pops into my head is this would be the talk of the town if, let's say, 5% of that basket is Bitcoin.
absolutely. And I would not be surprised that it ends up being that. And also gold, and also SDRs in some mix. You wink and nod to China and put the renminbi or the yuan in it. You put the ruble in it. You put, obviously dollars in it. You put euros in it. It's a basket across commodities that people believe in or currencies that people have some faith in. And what this thing is equal to is a proportion of that.
And if they're gonna go all out with those assets, I would tell them, put less of the individual countries' currencies, and maybe even put S&P 500 in it.
And oil, and we don't know because it's not in the white paper. They keep it very vague. Over the next year, we're going to find out not only who the other members are going to be, and I'll be very interested if there's any public members in that. And secondly, what is this thing going to be attached to? What is the reserve here? It's not tether with US dollars. It's tether with this huge basket of something, but we don't know what it is.
Well, they have given.
Hey guys, I gotta run. I gotta get to dinner.
Great to see you.
It's amazing. Like I went to bed at 1 a.m. last night, and it was like bright. It was like noon. It's great here.
I love that waterfall.
Oh yeah, no, I sent out some tweets with the videos. All right, guys, great discussion. Please finish up and talk to you all soon.
Great,
Bye.
Thanks for joining, Tone. So yeah, I was just going to refer back to the white paper real quick, and they do make a specific mention to gold. They say instead of backing Libra with gold, it will be backed by a collection of low volatility assets. So I think that there's no way that there's going to be Bitcoin in there. There's no way there'll be oil. They specifically say that won't be gold. They're one of their main goals and focuses is a stable currency. So they really are wanting to stay away from commodities and wanting to focus on government debt and fiat currencies to back the Libra with.
But we already know all it takes is 70% of the 100 to put anything they want in it.
Well, they list that specifically in writing, that they can change it anytime they want.
Exactly.
So yeah,
all of it into Bitcoin if 70% decided to put it all into Bitcoin, or all into gold, or all into SDRs. And that's why the question about who are the 100, that is the whole point here. Who are they? We know these great names. We know, Mercy Corp and MasterCard and PayPal. But who are the other 90? And that's where it all is either going to hang together from my perspective, meaning being adopted. Not that it should be, not that it's better than Bitcoin, but is it possible that they have come up with a way here to actually get this done on a worldwide basis that's acceptable to a lot of the big players, almost none of who are in Bitcoin?
It's very, very possible, and I appreciate you wondering kind of what do you think is going to happen opposed to what do you want to happen, and that is how I try to be myself, and I kind of lined out why I do not really want this to necessarily succeed, but the large majority of myself believes that it will. I feel confident that this is going to gain a lot of traction and is going to gain a lot of adoption, and it really does make some hairs stand up on the back of my neck, and makes me really kind of think of some conspiracy type of stuff, like New World Order trying to make a globalized currency that they are in control of in response to Bitcoin being invented. That is something that I have thought way too much about, and I'm afraid to say that this kind of gives me an uneasy feeling that might be what's going on here when you see so many big name companies coming together and signing off on the same thing, like Visa and MasterCard. What are they doing? This is a direct competitor to them. I mean, it says throughout the white paper that they're trying to make this a better way to transact than debit cards and credit cards. So seeing these companies come together and trying to get this through on a globalized scale makes me really wonder, has there been that wink and a nod by the most important regulators across the world? And if that is the case, then do they have a really good way to compete with Bitcoin, at least in terms of from the to the masses, to the common person? If they're really trying to establish a alternative to Bitcoin that may seem like it has all of the advantages and progressions, but in the end of the day, it still is rife with all of the same old problems of centralization and control. Then this seems like a very good way to do it. And like Tyler said, kind of seems like they're threading the needle in between. You have Bitcoin here, and then you have the traditional payment processors here. And this Libra seems like it's kind of trying to carve out a little area in the middle where it's not really a Visa and it's not really a crypto, but it's going to try to accomplish what both are. So that's something that I am a little uneasy about how likely I think it is to succeed.
Well, this has been a great discussion. Thank you for all the research and work you did, and Jimmy Song and Tone and Saifedean. There are a lot more questions than there are answers, obviously, and the questions are very big and important. We don't know them. We don't know what the answers are, but we will, and we'll be following this and get as much to everybody as we can. But this also brings up the question of Bitcoin itself. So why don't we take a look at Bitcoin? We've run an hour and 15 minutes already, but Bitcoin was pulling back earlier, and I called up Socrates to think what his short and intermediate term outlook was. So I'll turn it over to you if you want to pull that up.
All right, will do. And pulling up a chart right here. So this has been a very interesting sort of 24 hours. Let's go ahead and start with the daily. So have been keeping my eye on a few trend lines. Was kind of disappointed at this action right in here. The horizontal looked like it was breaking. Right here, we got through this local high and we're rallying up. This candle failed to close above. The local high was at 91, and then the following candle did. And now we were testing my trend line, and I was mainly expecting this trend line to break because for me, horizontals are more important than trend lines, and breaking through this horizontal area was making me think that we should go to 96. And with how close we did get there, I was kind of forced to reevaluate. So I was using 96 as my target based on this horizontal right here. And we got up to 94 and then all the way up to 94.79. So getting quite close to the target that I had and pulling up shy from it. So that was kind of some action that I really wasn't liking to see. And I was really in the last day or so expecting us to break through 96. I was going to not take as much profit as I had originally planned on. And basically, I was looking at this sort of move here that I thought I was really liking this action in here. We created a new local high, we pulled back and had a very nice pullback to this trend line, and then got this doji and looked like we were continuing to rally. So right here, I was really expecting us to break right through 96 and go right for a $10,000 retest. Was watching these candles very closely. They kept trying to get up here and close above the 93.34, and they kept failing. This one really looked like it was going to. Yesterday about this time, it really looked like the market was ready to break out, and then it didn't, and it started to pull back. It closed below resistance and now has been pulling back. And that has put us into a position where I am needing to see if I should be taking partial profit because I kind of missed my target. Should I be adjusting the stop loss from entering in down here? All of these things are very important to consider when price does not, and when it starts to show like signs of weakening before reaching the profit target. So that is what I'm looking at here. I did adjust my stop losses on half of my position to right under here. Looking at this low that we pulled back to on June 16th. Looking on the 4-hour chart, I'm using that low, which is in line with a horizontal here. And I have moved my stops up. I don't know the exact number off the top of my head, but I think it's 87.49 right here. So 50% of my position, the stop loss has been trailed to below this local low. And the rest has been moved to break even. So if you remember, I was entering here, here, and here. My average cost basis was around $79.50. So I have moved the stop loss to break even for half of that position, and then the rest has been moved to slightly under 8,800. The 8,800 is my key area of support. As long as we can continue staying above there, then I'm going to be remaining short-term bullish and intermediate term. If it does fall below this 8,800 area, then I may even be front running this. I might not wait for it to come all the way back and trigger this break even stop. I might go ahead and exit with a close below this 50 EMA and close below this horizontal if that were to happen. I have liked the action that we have seen over the last 8 hours. Every time the price has really started to threaten my areas of support, it has gotten a significant reaction. We can look at just the last 2 candles. We have these wicks here. Anytime the price has fallen below 90.75, it has not wanted to stay under there. And these wicks here coming off of my support zones tells me that there is a lot of demand, that it is moving up. And now what is most important to me is this guy right here looks like it could be a higher low relative to here. So as long as this is not only staying above my 88 area of support, but it's also trying to form a higher low, that is looking to me as pretty bullish and something that I like to see. So not only moving up and finding support above this prior low, but also wicking off of that and showing that the price is not staying down here for very long. It's getting bought up pretty quickly. So that is basically how I am looking at it and how I am trading it. From here, I would be looking at a very small sort of parallel channel that looks like it could be developing, that is kind of reminiscent to what we saw back in here. You have the big spike up, pulls back down, rallies up, and then comes back down to support. That's kind of what we got here, and then continues to trade in between that range while it's slightly appreciating. And then if it breaks through the top of that, watch out. So that's kind of what I am looking at here, is potentially you could draw it like I had that very small, or maybe I made a tweet yesterday comparing this price action in here to this in here, and it does look very similar to me. You notice that we have this, we got a trend line there after the first sort of spike up. You rally up, get this trend line, and then after that trend line, we retest support and get a bit of a parabola that comes off of support. That's kind of what we're getting here. So I'm seeing a lot of similarities in the current price action as it relates to what we saw back in April, and potentially seeing this fractal here is something that I would be very interested in. Would be something like this, if I can zoom it up just enough. Notice how it would come down to retest that area here before taking off. So we have the first trend line here, kind of parabola here, and then a breakdown to retest this area, which is right in line with the 200 EMA on the 4-hour, and then potentially another big move to the upside. So that is a potential fractal that I'll be watching for, and then and that is what I would be sort of planning on if this 88 does break down. And until then, am going to be remaining bullish as long as we are supporting above this 8,800 level. What are you thinking, Tyler?
No, I like all of that. That's very good. I made the decision not to sell the last half of our position. We sold half of it at 8,800. We've had a lot of chances to sell it above 8,800. We still are in that zone. All of my longer term and intermediate term are still very positive. It's just struggling a little bit as we thought it would. We talked about all of the overhead resistance that starts at the 9,000 and runs up to the Fibonacci around the 94, and then there's a number of other things, but step by step it's taken all of those out. And I'm still leaning in that direction. So I'll be very interested to see if this short-term move begins to deteriorate, and maybe that will give us some more clues. But that's a great synopsis of it. We wanted to talk about a lot of other things. Gold popped back above 1350 today. The stock market is roaring, but we've already gone on close to an hour and a half, and so we're going to cut it off here. I am traveling tomorrow, 13-hour road trip, and so I probably will not be available tomorrow, but we will definitely shoot for a Friday unless something big happens, and then Socrates can take it himself tomorrow, either with Bitcoin or the Libra question is not for tomorrow or the next day or the next week or the next month. That's going to develop over the next year, basically. And as we said, a lot more questions than answers at this point, but it sure is fascinating to me. The stock market is looking very interesting, and I am getting closer and closer to getting completely back into it. I like the action, but have not pulled the trigger on that. And Bitcoin obviously is always interesting. So thank you very much for all of that. And I think we should say adios.
Sounds great. Thank you for having me on today, and it was a pleasure to chat with you about some of the potential possibilities and repercussions of the Facebook Libra coin. So it was a pleasure, and I will look forward to chatting with you soon. Have a safe trip back tomorrow.
Great. Thanks a lot.